Hey guys, and welcome back to the farm. I'm Susie, and in today's video we are going to be making over this clock that I found at the thrift store. It's really big, it's really pretty as is, but I thought that we could bring it up a few levels. It is plastic, but luckily for me, it came apart really easily. All I had to do was remove all the screws on the back and lift the glass and the clock part out of the frame. I think I did pay $9 for this frame, for this clock, and that's a little bit more than I pay, but I really feel like it's going to be something special, and I'll be able to sell it for a whole lot when I finish here. So I just removed the clock part and the glass, and then we're going to have some color today. I love color. I'm not afraid of color. You wouldn't think it to look at my house, which is mostly neutral, but I love to paint color, and those sell really well for me too. So I'm going to paint this in a coral. This is a resin paint by Rethunk Junk, and it's a pretty good paint. Fusion has a gorgeous coral, but this one was already open and I need to use it up. So we're going to give this, it did take me, I think, at least 2.5 coats and a pretty good bit of time with all those intricate details on the outside and such. I really could not get in between them completely, but when it's hanging up on the wall, you cannot tell that at all. So I'm going to get this painted up with 2.5 coats of this coral, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So here's where I made my first mistake. So I really should have left this paper in. I did not know that it was going to be basically hollow underneath. If I would have left the paper, I could have just painted over it, but I thought that I was doing right, and that's one of the things about making over these projects. They don't always go how you envision them. So once I took the paper out, I realized I had to go another way. So I just cut a piece of cardboard to fit in there. Remember, I couldn't do anything thick because then the clock mechanism would not work. It would stick out too far. So I had to have something pretty thin. Looking back, I think I probably had some really thin Luan wood that I could have cut, but it was nighttime and I didn't really want to go out to the shop and cut anything. So we are going to do a paint inlay today. IOD has released a new paint inlay called Vida Flora. It is designed by Debbie Beard, who does the DIY paints, and the colors in it are so gorgeous. This is a beautiful paint inlay, and I have not had a chance to use it yet, and I thought that this clock would be the perfect thing for it. So to use your paint inlays, you want to put a good layer of wet paint for the paint inlay to go into. And then I like to spritz my paint inlay. That just helps activate the paint on the paper and helps it go into your project and your wet paint really well. So normally I use a brayer, or sometimes I use a brayer, but on this, with this cardboard, I just use my fingers. And that was my second mistake. I should have pushed it down in there more, because when I painted over this cardboard, it left this texture, and apparently I did not get the inlay pushed into the texture good. So when I pulled it back, anyway, once your paint inlay has dried, you come back and spray it again to reactivate the paint, and then you can lift your inlay up. And y'all, my heart sank when I started doing this and saw that the paint did not get into the little textured pieces. I was so upset. But I continued to work with it, and I went ahead and pulled the rest off, and it also tore my inlay, which normally doesn't happen. I mean, I'm a pro at these, and this just broke my heart that this inlay did not transfer, and it was all my fault for doing it on this cardboard with all this texture. But I'm not giving up. Like, I can't give up on it. I could have just immediately repainted, put a transfer on or something. but I decided to go with it. So I pulled out a bunch of my paints from my arsenal and gave it my own colors. And I just filled in a lot of the spots that looked really bad. And I know it's not perfect, but that's kind of part of the game when it comes to upcycling items. They're not going to be perfect. I mean, if they are, sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not. And that just is part of the beauty, the perfectly imperfect of handmade items that you can't get anywhere else. So I just came in with little detailed brushes and filled in a lot of the spaces that I thought looked really bad. I could have spent another hour painting every bit of every bird in, but I decided that a little bit of the distressing was kind of endearing and I liked it. So I just filled in a lot with some of that coral and the champness, which is that blue color. We're going to use that champness here again in a minute. And then I filled in a little bit of the yellow and I felt better about it. It still, like I said, wasn't perfect, but I'm going to go with it. So you need to seal in your inlays because they are a paint that can be reactivated. I used to just only spray them, but then I discovered that if you go really, really light-handed on your top coat, you can seal them in with a brush and you don't get any smears. So I put everything back together in the clock and I realized that there was this strip that needed to be hidden where the cardboard and the frame came together. So I'm taking my Trimmings 3 mold, and these have all these gorgeous trimmings that lock together, so you can do however much you need of them. And so I think I ended up making 6 castings with clay from this mold. To make your castings, you want to dust your mold with cornstarch and then push your clay into it. IOD molds have this micro rim on the side where it's really easy to clean up the edges, and this one comes out really good. So I finished making all my castings. I laid them in there while they were wet so they could dry to the shape of the frame. And then I'm going to take them out one by one and I'm going to paint them with the champness color. This is a gorgeous blue color that Fusion has. I've done lots of projects with it and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to take each little section out one at a time and give them a good coat of the champness paint. Now the molds are still wet here because I want to paint them while they are wet. That will reduce shrinking and cracking and make them fit, because a lot of times when you do these connecting ones and you don't paint them, they will dry too fast and the molds will shrink up and then they won't fit together like you wanted them to. So these are still wet, so I'm carefully painting them as not to hinder any of the pretty details on the molds. And then I'm going to let the paint dry for a few minutes, but not the mold. And while the mold's still wet, I am going to glue them onto the clock. To glue them on, I am going to use Tite Bond glue and also hot glue for an instant hold. So I'm just going to do one strip at a time. The paint is somewhat dry here, but the mold, the clay is still wet, so we can mold them into the shape that we need to. So I'm going to do a strip of Tite Bond and then hot glue to get all these down. My time was very limited this week, so I wasn't able to get a lot of thrift flips done. I do have some more to show y'all, but those are going to be in next week's video. I felt like this clock was such a statement piece, and I can't decide if I messed it up. If it doesn't sell, though, you know what? I can bring it home and I can redo it. I can cut a piece of thin wood. I can do something else with it. I can paint it white. I can put a transfer on it. When it comes to these thrift flips, they're never garbage. You can always redo them, and I will not get rid of this clock if it doesn't sell as is. I will definitely bring it home and redo it. So what do you guys think? Do y'all think that I have completely ruined this clock? You can be honest. It won't hurt my feelings. I have some mixed feelings about it too, but I just went with it. I think it's gorgeous. I know that someone is going to love this in their home. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this paint inlay. You can get the Vida Flora Paint Inlay on my website, susieonthefarm.com. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see you again next week.